623, 14 December 2020. This is from ForwardObserver.com. Economic warning. Ferguson on great power decline. Economic historian Neil Ferguson writes that the U.S. is facing decline due to rising national debt and secular stagnation or persistently low economic growth. Quote, history also teaches us that debt and power are connected. A great power or empire that accumulates too high amount of debt and fails to keep growth ahead of debt service is destined to decline. End quote. Ferguson cites Bridgewater's Ray Dalio, who says the U.S. is falling into a debt cycle trap, giving future administrations two options: raise taxes and cut spending, or print a lot of money. Observer's note. Dalio has said since at least 2017 that the U.S. is both falling into the debt cycle trap and facing a domestic situation where civil war or revolution is made more likely. I would say that the events from this year specifically and this election in general are making civil war or revolution much more likely. The Biden transition team, which employs economic advisors who are also proponents of modern monetary theory, has clearly signaled that increased, yes, because this always works, increased taxation, increased spending, and increased money printing are the way forward, which is some sort of Frankenstein third option that Dalio doesn't mention. Under this scenario, modern monetary theory really sounds like critical race theory, just with dollars and garbage, becomes likely, which means that a Biden-Harris administration's contribution to U.S. history would be radically changing the economic and monetary system where the government permanently runs a deficit to increase spending that bolsters economic activity. As Ferguson points out, through historical examples, if economic growth doesn't outpace the growth of the national debt, the U.S. is likely to experience accelerating decline, especially as the U.S. dollar weakens as a result. If I have a car, and I'm still paying on the car to a bank. And for some reason, the bank, I don't know, they close, they go away, something happens to the bank. They no longer exist as an entity. Do I still have a car loan to a bank if they don't exist? Since all this debt is owed to a private banking cartel, the U.S. incarnation of it, and they are eliminated, wholesale, to whom do we owe a debt? Now, I thought that something may change. I understood that President Trump sort of put the Federal Reserve under the authority or auspices or guidance or something of the Treasury Department. I thought that the head of the Treasury Department was the one, basically, they were directing the Federal Reserve. It was a monumental move. nobody could have seen that coming. And people said, wow, this is going to change many things. Nothing changed. I need to find that out. I need to find that out. What exactly was that move about? But if there's no bank, if it doesn't exist, the debt doesn't exist. At least to a rational person. Low intensity conflict in some. Raz charges dropped by district attorney. According to reports, Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt has dropped all charges against 18 individuals arrested during the initial eviction and raid at the Red House last week in Portland, Oregon. Law enforcement pointed out that the charges were dropped despite the discovery of weapons and multiple arrestees having criminal records or previous arrests. In a statement given Friday, Schmidt wrote, "Continued violence, property damage, and harm to our community is inexcusable and will be met with aggressive prosecution, not if you keep dropping the damn charges. They will be met by aggressive release." Observer's note. District Attorney Schmidt and Mayor Ted Wheeler have made a conflicting mix of comments promising both aggressive government response and sympathy with Raz occupiers. In Portland and other cities, sympathetic or ineffective DAs provide a revolving door for leftist activists to continue direct action without fear of significant consequences at the local level. Yeah, but let that let that be conservatives and not their fellow leftists. Crowdsource funding for legal aid and bail will likely hamper any action the justice system does take. Over $300,000 was raised last week alone for the family claiming ownership of the Red House. Anarchists and Trump supporters clash in multiple cities. Anti-fascists and Trump supporters clashed in multiple encounters in Sacramento, Olympia, and Washington, D.C. In Olympia, that would be Olympia, Washington. In Olympia, a significant number of people on both sides were armed, and one anti-fascist was reportedly shot during an altercation. In the Capitol, multiple people were stabbed during fights between black bloc anti-fascists and Proud Boys. I think that was an anti-fascist or one of these little liberal Marxist pieces of trash stabbed for Proud Boys, I believe. This level of violence is likely to continue and potentially escalate, you think, through the rest of the year leading up to the inauguration, at least, because it's not going to stop. Because now that, well, presumptively, the face of Antifa, the face of Black Lives Matter, even though ironically they weren't invited to the table, is Biden and Harris specifically. Harris, again, promising that the unrest would continue, stating in fact that it should continue. She said it. You can find it. A renewed patriot militia movement will likely continue to grow to counter a perceived illegitimate Biden administration. I'm sorry. If the person gets in through blatant fraud, it is not perceived at that point. It is in fact. A growing number of armed groups at these clashes could lead to more lethal outcomes. Michigan legislators closed while electors meet. The Michigan State House and Senate will be closed as electors are set to cast votes for the next president. State Senate spokespersons reported that the offices were closed due to recommendations from law enforcement based on credible threats of violence. Observers note, Michigan State Police reported they are monitoring social media for potential threats, but did not make an official recommendation to close legislative offices based on any specific threats. Democratic state representatives report unconfirmed threats of violence against Michigan delegates. The Democratic-led decision to close the building could be political posturing, but Michigan has experienced a notable amount of unrest surrounding the election and severe coronavirus lockdowns. Well, what do you want when you're trying to cripple an entire state economy? Purposefully. Alt-right studying guerrilla warfare. Alt-right chat room participants urged individuals to read War of the Flea, the classic study of guerrilla warfare by Robert Tabor in preparation for the upcoming conflict. In discussions of the book, one contributor wrote that they could offer basic services like food and protection to local white populations in order to build popular support for an ethno-state. How about for Americans? Americans, not the liberals, not the progressives, the Greens. How about Americans that actually want a constitution-based, constitutional republic? You know, right now the words of Franklin echoed in my head when she asked what they just created, essentially, and he said a constitution, a constitutional republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. We're a few days from losing it. Observers note, much of the discussions and preparations within alt-right circles online involve a focus on establishing homesteads, acquiring wilderness survival skills, and forming well-defended rural communities to endure potential societal collapse. In principle, I actually don't disagree with any of that. Proposed offensive actions focus on dispersed guerrilla tactics that seek to agitate the government and provoke overreactions that inspire other resistance around the country. Okay, I don't agree with that. Upcoming event calendar, 14 December, that would be today. Meeting the electors, the Electoral College. We'll see what sort of a sham thing this is. 6 January, election certification, U.S. Senate. You know, I did have thoughts about the whole Red House Autonomous Zone thing. If Democrats are killing the economy, and forcing people to be homeless, this is Democrats, the people that these freaking morons vote for over and over again. I'm of two minds. One, if you vote for this and you suffer the consequences of their decisions, on the one hand, I think to myself, this is what you wanted. This is what and who you voted for, these principles. The Marxists. So I'm sort of torn because I don't have any sympathy for any of these liberals who fall victim to the very people who they vote for. I don't. On the other hand, though I don't consider any of them American citizens, even the ones who have formerly served in the armed forces of the United States, if they're Marxists, to me, they're not even, to me, it nullifies everything they did. They should be stripped of every recognition, every medal. Their service records should be, they should disappear, the service records. Once you take on and you support any form of government anathema to the Constitution of the United States that we're all sworn to serve and defend. Once you vote for something that's completely the opposite of what you've sworn to support and defend, your entire record should be made null and void, stripped of everything. If you received a pension, you don't get a pension. VA, eliminated. You lost that right and privilege. Now, for the homeless, no, it doesn't mean you're not people. It's a different story. But if Democrats are creating situations in which people are made homeless because of their decisions, if people don't want to be evicted, I sympathize with those people. If they're suffering for these Democrats, horrible financial decisions in this whole COVID business, and people are finding that they have no money to eat or sleep indoors, I have no sympathy for the so-called lawmakers, these people who are arbitrarily making these decisions that destroy people's lives. My sympathy lies with the people. My sympathy lies with the people. Yeah, that's about it. 623 out.